Hi, my name's Tim Marriott. I'm with Alberta History Tours. At Alberta History Tours, we help you to discover Alberta's history, sometimes hidden in plain sight. Now, we all know that 2020 has been a difficult year. But as we approach Christmas of 2020, we've been promised a spell of mild weather, above zero temperatures through at least Boxing Day. In 1879 at Edmonton, December was a very cold month. In fact, in a letter to her brother in Ontario, written on December 11th, Leviza McDougall, wife of John A. McDougall, pioneer merchant, noted that it had been minus 56 degrees Fahrenheit the night before. Now, in Celsius, that's only minus 49. Now, as we look at the scene around us today in the winter of 2020, we have to try to imagine the Edmonton of 140 years ago, without the bridges, without the buildings, without the roads. And when we look at this river valley, we're looking at the McDonald Hotel from down on the flats. In 1879 was the heart of the new and straggling Edmonton settlement strung out along the high bank on what's now East Jasper Avenue. Now, as I've noted in other times, 1879 was a watershed year in Edmonton history. So let's think about that year 140 years ago. And imagine that it's a very dark night, minus 56 degrees or minus 50, depending on which scale you use, with perhaps just a light or two burning in the old fort, which would be a little bit to the west of us, a few pinpoints of light from cabins along the high bank between there and where we're looking now, a few cabins clustered together for warmth in 1879. Now, the tradition at Christmas time in fur trade Edmonton was that travelers would come from the various outposts to spend Christmas into New Year's at Fort Edmonton. So they would come from places like Jasper, from Lac La Biche, from the Victoria settlement. And in fact, John and Leviza McDougall had even an overnight guest, except in those days, because of the distances, the overnight guests usually stayed for a week or so. Now, Edmonton was a small place, a quiet place, but they still knew how to celebrate Christmas. So their next door neighbor was a man named Colin Fraser. Colin Fraser was employed in the fur trade as well, and was the son of the former governor of the Hudson's Bay Company, and Colin Fraser Sr. was the bagpiper for the governor. Colin Fraser Jr., even though he was now living at Edmonton, had spent his whole life in the fur trade and decided to have a party on Christmas night. So John and Leviza note in their letter to the brother that they've got their man, George Gourlay, all ready for the party at Colin Fraser's by lending him a stiff collar, a necktie, and even put a little perfume on his handkerchief to impress the ladies. The party started. John A. McDougall walked over to the party about 10 o'clock just to see what was going on. And when he got back to Leviza, he reported that the party was in full swing with all kinds of dancing couples, children and babies rolling around on the floor, and great steaming pots of roast beef, of plum pudding, and of course tea cooking away. And so when we try to imagine that little tiny community in remote Edmonton in 1879, Christmas night, punctuated by that light, the sound of the fiddle, the Red River jig going, and the hoeing down, as Leviza noted to her brother, we have to think about that change that was coming. Here was Edmonton huddled on its high riverbank for Christmas, doing the traditions of the fur trade, but soon that modern world would start to shoulder its way into this magnificent river valley that is still Edmonton's most defining feature.